Human mechanic fist-bumped the alien woman, without knowing she was the new Galactic Queen. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, smearing black grease across his worn overalls. The hum of the freighter's engine filled the small repair bay of the outer space station. Sparks flickered faintly as he tightened the last bolt on a cargo drone, and a satisfied smile crossed his face. It had been a long day, but the ship would be ready for launch. In the universe's fringe, mechanics like Ethan were essential, though often invisible to those in power. He liked it that way. He didn't care about titles or politics. He only cared about engines, circuits, and making things work. The station was crowded today. Merchants and traders from dozens of star systems moved in waves across the docking area. The smells of fuel, synthetic food, and alien flora mingled into an odd, pungent scent that reminded Ethan of early mornings on his home planet. He adjusted his cap and glanced at the docking schedule. Everything seemed normal until a soft, elegant sound of footsteps drew his attention. A tall figure appeared at the end of the bay. She moved differently than most aliens he had seen. Her posture was perfect, graceful, yet natural, as if she belonged in the chaos but was untouched by it. Her skin shimmered with a subtle metallic hue, catching the dim lights overhead. She wore simple clothing but of a quality and style that marked her apart. Even without extravagant jewelry or decorations, Ethan could tell she was not an ordinary visitor. "Excuse me," she said politely, her voice calm and melodic. It carried a strange warmth that made Ethan pause mid-wrench turn. "I need assistance with a small craft." "Is this the right place?" Ethan, instinctively helpful, gestured toward the freighter bay. "Yeah, I can help. What kind of problem are we talking about?" The alien woman stepped closer. "It's a minor technical issue. A docking module needs alignment." "I prefer someone who doesn't charge too much attention to authority. Someone honest, skilled, and straightforward." Ethan chuckled. He didn't know what she meant by authority, but he didn't question it. "You're in luck. I don't care about authority. I just care about making things work." As she nodded, a crate toppled nearby, nearly colliding with Ethan. Without thinking, he stepped forward, steadying the crate with one hand while instinctively extending the other in a casual fist. "Careful there." The alien woman, startled for a moment, instinctively bumped her fist against his. The contact was brief but firm, and she felt an unexpected spark of amusement. Ethan, covered in grease and sweat, didn't even notice the odd looks from the nearby crew. To him, it was just a friendly gesture. "You humans are interesting," she said softly, almost to herself. Ethan shrugged. "We try. I'm Ethan, by the way, just a mechanic." "I am Selara," she replied, smiling faintly. "Nice to meet you, Ethan." The two of them laughed lightly. The moment was simple, mundane, yet it held a quiet significance neither fully understood. Around them, life in the station continued. The merchants shouted prices, small service droids scuttled across the floor, and the low hum of engines filled the air. It was ordinary. And yet this ordinary encounter was about to ripple across galaxies. Selara led Ethan to the docking module. He inspected it carefully, noting immediately what was wrong. "Looks like the alignment pins are off by a few degrees. Easy fix," he said, pulling out his tools. As he worked, Selara observed quietly. Most of the aliens in the station would have demanded constant attention, instructions, or a ceremonial greeting. But not her. She seemed content to watch a human at work, quietly fascinated by his methodical approach and natural confidence. "So you don't care about who I am or what I do?" she asked finally. Ethan didn't look up from the module. "Not really. Status doesn't make something work better, does it?" Selara smiled. "Not often." The repair took nearly an hour. Ethan worked efficiently, explaining each step simply, not condescending but clear enough for someone unfamiliar with human engineering. Selara listened, asked a few questions, and occasionally offered suggestions that were surprisingly practical. When the final bolt was secured, Ethan wiped his hands again. "All done. You should be able to dock smoothly now." Solara stepped back and tested the controls. The module hummed perfectly, docking with precision. She looked at Ethan, her expression a mixture of amusement and admiration. "That was remarkable. You humans have a very direct approach." Ethan grinned. "We like things that work, no nonsense." For a moment they simply stood there. Outside, the station's corridors were alive with the usual chaos, but inside that small repair bay, time felt different, quiet, important, and strangely personal. Before leaving, Solara extended her fist again. "For luck?" she asked. Ethan chuckled and bumped it with hers. "For luck." And then she left. Ethan went back to his tools, already thinking about the next freighter. To him, the encounter was brief, unremarkable, just another day at work. But for Solara, the moment lingered. She had been observing countless cultures and individuals across the galaxy, but the honesty, humility, and simple kindness of this human mechanic left an impression she had not expected. Later that evening, news started filtering through the station's information network. The rumors were subtle at first. A new galactic queen had assumed power in the central systems. Most of the station ignored it. Politics so far from home rarely mattered. But Solara's presence had been noted by a few sharp-eyed observers. Some whispered that the queen had been seen in the outer docks, moving among commoners, studying them quietly. Meanwhile, Ethan closed the shop, humming a tune from his home planet. He did not check the news. To him, the stars beyond the station were just points of light, not kingdoms or politics. He prepared for another day of engines, tools, and grease. That night, Solara reflected on the encounter. She was the new queen, a figure of immense power and influence. Entire planets would bow to her commands. Yet here, in a remote station, she had met someone who treated her like an equal. Someone who saw the work, not the crown. That was rare, almost unheard of. She felt a strange warmth, a curiosity, and even a bit of hope. Perhaps in this human she had glimpsed a new way of seeing the galaxy, honest, practical, and unafraid. By morning, the station buzzed with stories about mysterious visitors. Merchants speculated about new technologies, traders discussed unusual contracts, and a few nervous station officials debated the implications of royalty walking among the people incognito. Ethan, however, remained blissfully unaware. He greeted everyone with his usual good humor, unaware that the casual fist bump he had shared would soon be the talk of galactic media. As Ethan left the station to fetch parts from the next bay, he passed the place where Solara had stayed. She was gone, as quietly as she had appeared. He didn't notice the faint shimmer where she had stood. He didn't notice the curious eyes of other aliens who had seen the queen in disguise. He didn't notice that this simple moment would shape events far beyond the station. And so life continued. Engines hummed, traders bargained, and mechanics worked. Yet somewhere across the galaxy, a new queen smiled quietly, remembering a human who had fist-bumped her without knowing who she was. The moment was small, fleeting, but it held a promise that would soon unfold, unexpected, extraordinary, and entirely human. The day ended like any other, but the universe had already shifted slightly. For Ethan, it was just another day at work. For Solara, it was the beginning of a connection that neither power nor position could define. And in a few days, that connection would start to show its true importance. Human mechanic fist-bumped the alien woman, without knowing she was the new galactic queen. Part 2. Recognition and consequences. A few days had passed since Ethan's casual fist bump with the mysterious alien woman. To him, it was just another fleeting encounter, something to laugh about with his coworkers if it came up. Engines had been repaired, freighters had launched, and life in the station returned to its usual rhythm. Yet across the galaxy, the story of the new queen had begun to spread like wildfire. Solara's ascension had become official. Reports and messages from distant worlds carried the news. A young, wise, and surprisingly practical ruler now governed the central systems. Her policies, though still forming, promised fairness and innovation. And in a quiet corner of the outer sector, some curious gossip began circulating about a certain mechanic who had unknowingly shared a fist bump with the Queen herself. Ethan had no idea. He walked through the bustling corridors of the station, carrying a crate of spare parts. His overalls were still streaked with grease, his hands darkened from constant labor. He hummed a tune he had learned on his home planet, completely oblivious to the fact that his life was about to take a sudden turn. "Ethan," called a voice from a nearby stall. It was Mara, a fellow mechanic and longtime friend. She was waving a datapad in the air. "Have you seen this? You fist bumped the new Queen." Ethan froze mid-step. "What? The Queen? Don't joke, Mara. Which Queen?" Mara handed him the datapad. On the screen was a holographic news broadcast showing Selara in her official regalia. Her metallic-hued skin gleamed under ceremonial lights, and a crowd of alien diplomats bowed as she entered a central hall. The caption read, "Queen Selara, the new leader who walks among her people." Ethan stared, his jaw slack. He remembered her face, the calm, curious eyes, the fist bump, but he had never imagined she was royalty. "Wait, that's the same alien woman?" he asked incredulously. "Yes. The one you bumped fists with in the docking bay," Mara said, trying to suppress her laughter. "Do you realize what this means?" Ethan shook his head slowly. The reality sank in. He had greeted the most powerful figure in known space casually, like any other customer. And she had smiled. Something in her had noticed him. Something about him had stood out. Meanwhile, across the station, Selara was already aware of the stir. Word of the human mechanic had reached her aides. They were puzzled by her interest in such a simple life. Yet Selara found herself quietly amused. The man had been genuine, skilled, and honest, qualities she rarely saw in her royal circles. He hadn't treated her like a queen. He had treated her like a person. When Ethan returned to the repair bay that day, he didn't expect much. But as he rounded a corner, he froze. Standing there in full ceremonial attire was Selara. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a soft warmth in her eyes. "Ethan," she said, her voice carrying across the busy corridor. "I was hoping I'd see you again." Ethan blinked, stunned. "Why you're the Queen?" His voice cracked slightly, disbelief and awe mixing together. Selara smiled faintly. "Yes, I am Selara, and yes, I am the Queen, but I remember our first meeting, the fist bump, the honesty. That matters to me more than titles." Ethan's mind raced. He felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and an odd sense of pride. Here was someone who ruled entire worlds, and she remembered him, not for his status, not for wealth, not for any power, but for being himself. I don't really know what to say," he stammered. "Then don't say anything," Selara replied lightly. "Just walk with me." She led him through the station, past curious eyes and low whispers. The other mechanics stopped their work to watch, unsure whether they were witnessing a royal inspection or something far more extraordinary. Yet Ethan felt strangely calm. He was still a mechanic, still covered in grease, but somehow that didn't feel wrong. Selara didn't care about appearances. She cared about the person. They reached a quiet observation deck overlooking the docking bays. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, and ships of all kinds glided silently through space. Selara turned to Ethan. "I wanted to see the people who build and maintain this galaxy," she said softly. "Not the diplomats, not the politicians, not the merchants, people like you, honest, hardworking human." Ethan laughed nervously. "I just fix things, that's all. Nothing important compared to, ruling planets." "Sometimes," Selara said thoughtfully, "the smallest actions have the greatest consequences. A single honest gesture can change how people see the world, or even how the world sees itself." Her words struck him deeply. He realized that his simple act, the casual fist bump, had already started a chain of events he could never have imagined. Selara's aides, once skeptical of the human mechanic, now watched quietly, realizing that this connection could bridge a gap between human colonies and the galactic central systems. For hours they talked. Ethan explained the daily struggles of working on the edge of known space, the challenges of keeping ships running, the human spirit that kept communities alive in harsh conditions. Solara listened intently, occasionally asking questions, her curiosity genuine. She was learning not about strategy or politics, but about life as lived by ordinary people. "You humans are remarkable," she said finally. "You survive, adapt, and keep moving forward even when no one is watching. That is strength." Ethan shrugged. "We just do what we have to." "Nothing special." "Nothing special," Solara repeated, shaking her head. "No, everything you do is extraordinary. You see the world as it is, not as titles or rules say it should be. That perspective is rare." For Ethan, the compliment was surreal. He had always been unnoticed, an ordinary mechanic in a vast galaxy. And now, a queen, the most powerful being in known space, valued his simple honesty and work ethic. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Solara's aides. They politely reminded her of a summit, a meeting of interstellar leaders, but Solara waved them off gently. "I will attend," she said, "but not without my friend here." Ethan's heart raced. "Emmy, why?" "Because you remind me why we rule," Solara replied. "Not for power, not for glory, but for the people. I want the council to hear your perspective." Over the next few days, Ethan found himself stepping into a world he had never imagined. From the observation deck to the Grand Council halls, he witnessed discussions that decided the fate of entire systems. He was nervous at first, but Solara's confidence in him gave him courage. His simple, honest insights, what worked on ships, how people truly lived and survived, began to influence decisions. The summit was tense, filled with debates and negotiations. But whenever Solara spoke, her eyes subtly found Ethan's, and the reminder of his grounded perspective seemed to steady her words. Other leaders noticed the human mechanic at her side, and curiosity spread. Who was this simple, honest man that the Queen trusted? By the end of the summit, a small but meaningful policy shift was agreed upon, one that prioritized the welfare of common workers and trade colonies on the outer edges of space. Ethan's suggestions, Solara acknowledged, had played a part. When the meeting concluded, Solara turned to Ethan. "You see, even small actions like a fist bump can lead to great change." Ethan smiled, still overwhelmed. "I just did what I thought was right. I never imagined all this." "Exactly," Solara said. "That is why I trust you. You act with honesty, without expectation of reward or recognition. That is the kind of strength this galaxy needs." The story of the human mechanic and the Queen quickly spread across systems. Some laughed at the idea of a simple fist bump starting a political ripple. Others admired the story as proof that integrity and honesty mattered more than rank. And through it all, Ethan remained grounded. He was still a mechanic. He still enjoyed engines, grease, and the hum of a ship coming to life. But now he understood the extraordinary power of small actions, of being genuine, and of treating everyone, even a queen, with respect. Solara, in turn, found a trusted ally in an unexpected place. She valued Ethan's perspective, his insight into the lives of ordinary beings, and the reminder that leadership was not about authority alone. It was about connection, honesty, and humility. And so, the galaxy began to change, quietly but steadily. A fist bump, casual and unremarkable to the world, had opened a bridge between human experience and galactic governance. It was proof that even in vast, complex systems, simple gestures could carry unimaginable significance. Ethan returned to his repair bay at the end of the summit, exhausted but smiling. He picked up his wrench, looked at the freighter waiting for service, and shook his head. Life had changed, yet somehow stayed the same. Engines still needed fixing. Ships still needed guidance. And somewhere a queen, Solara, was quietly reshaping the galaxy with him, side by side, reminding the universe that honesty, humility, and kindness could ripple across the stars. For Ethan, the simple act of a fist bump had changed everything. And yet, it all felt perfectly ordinary. Human mechanic fist bumped the alien woman, without knowing she was the new Galactic Queen Part 3, a bridge between worlds. The space station had returned to its normal rhythm, but Ethan's life had already changed in ways he had never imagined. Word of his fist bump with the new queen had spread across the sector, whispered by curious merchants, scribbled in interstellar news feeds, and even shared in casual conversations among station residents. Yet Ethan, ever humble, barely noticed. He still woke early, tightened bolts, tested engines, and made sure every ship leaving the station was safe and ready. But Selara had not forgotten him. The Queen's curiosity and appreciation for this simple, honest human had not faded. She had grown to value his perspective, his grounded outlook, and above all, his unwavering sincerity. Unlike many others she met in ceremonial halls and diplomatic chambers, Ethan said what he saw, not what he thought would please her. That honesty had begun to influence her decisions, and even the way she viewed leadership itself. One morning, as Ethan was working on a freighter's fuel system, a small, polished hovercar glided into the repair bay. Its surface reflected the station's dim lights like liquid silver. The hatch opened, and Selara stepped out, dressed simply, without her ceremonial regalia, though her presence alone commanded attention. "Good morning, Ethan," she said warmly. Ethan looked up, wiping sweat and grease from his brow. "Queen Selara again, I wasn't expecting." "No titles here," she interrupted gently, smiling. "I want us to speak as equals today. You've been invaluable, Ethan. I thought it was time we discussed something more important than engines or freighters." Ethan set down his wrench carefully, curious and a little nervous. "Important? Like what?" Selara gestured toward a private observation room overlooking the docking bays. The city of lights, ships, and bustling activity stretched beyond the windows. "I want to talk about connecting the outer sectors with the central systems, not just trade or resources, but culture, education, and understanding. And I want your advice. You've seen life at the edge of space. You know what people really need." Ethan swallowed. The thought that a queen, the most powerful person in known space, would seek his counsel was overwhelming. I don't know if I'm qualified," he said honestly. "You are," Selara replied firmly, "because you see the truth, not the politics. That's exactly what's missing in most discussions. Your perspective is rare, and I need it." Over the next several weeks, Ethan worked closely with Selara. He shared what life was like for mechanics, traders, and ordinary humans in the outer sectors. He described the small communities, the struggles to survive in distant, isolated regions, and the way humans work together despite scarcity and danger. Selara listened attentively, asking questions, taking notes, and considering his suggestions carefully. Through these discussions, a bond grew between them. It was not a bond of status or titles, but of mutual respect. Selara admired Ethan's honesty, humility, and intelligence. Ethan admired Selara's wisdom, curiosity, and genuine care for her people. Together, they began planning programs that could improve communication, support trade, and create opportunities for the isolated sectors of the galaxy. One evening, after a long day of strategy meetings and assessments, Selara invited Ethan to the observation deck. The stars glittered across the endless darkness of space. Ships of all shapes and sizes glided silently through the void. "You know," Selara said softly, "I never expected to find someone like you, someone ordinary who could teach me something extraordinary." Ethan laughed quietly, shaking his head. "I don't think I've done anything extraordinary. I just do my job and try to be honest." "Exactly," Selara replied. "That's what makes it extraordinary. The galaxy often overlooks simple honesty, but it is honesty that builds trust and trust that builds civilizations." Ethan felt a quiet pride. He realized that his small actions, the fist bump, the willingness to work sincerely, the choice to treat everyone with respect, had carried far more weight than he ever imagined. It wasn't about fame, power, or recognition. It was about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. A week later, Solara formally invited Ethan to an interstellar council. This time, it was not just an advisory role. It was a chance to influence policy, to represent the lives of ordinary humans and outer sector communities in discussions that shaped entire worlds. The council chamber was vast, filled with delegates from hundreds of civilizations. Aliens of every shape and size, color and form, watched him with curiosity, surprised that a human mechanic would be standing at the side of the Queen. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he stepped forward. He remembered his first day in the repair bay, the simple fist bump, the casual words that had sparked something no one could have predicted. He drew a deep breath. Solara stood beside him, her presence steady and reassuring. "Remember, Ethan," she said softly, "speak from your heart. Tell them what life is like at the edge of space. Be honest. That is all that matters." When he spoke, his words were simple but powerful. He described the struggles of remote stations, the resilience of mechanics and traders, and the courage of ordinary humans facing dangers no one else would see. He spoke about cooperation, honesty, and the importance of understanding people beyond politics. His voice was steady, his words sincere. By the end of the session, delegates were nodding, asking questions, and taking notes. Many were surprised to see the practicality and grounded perspective of a human mechanic influencing policy at the highest levels. Ethan realized that simple honesty, humility, and hard work could truly make a difference, even in the most complex and political situations. Outside the chamber, Solara smiled at him. "See," she said softly, "one fist bump, one honest person. That is all it took to create a bridge between worlds." Ethan laughed, still a little in disbelief. "I guess, sometimes ordinary people can do extraordinary things." "Yes," Solara said, her eyes reflecting the stars outside. "Extraordinary things happen when we stay true to ourselves, no matter who stands beside us or who we bump fists with." As days turned into weeks, Ethan continued his work in the station, repairing ships and maintaining engines. But his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a mechanic in a remote station. He was a bridge, a voice for the ordinary, and a trusted advisor to a queen who valued honesty above all else. Solara, meanwhile, continued her rule with renewed perspective. She worked tirelessly, balancing diplomacy, policy, and compassion. And always she remembered the human mechanic who had reminded her of something the galaxy often forgot, that the simplest acts, when done with honesty and integrity, could ripple across worlds. One evening, as the station lights dimmed and ships drifted silently through the void, Ethan and Solara stood once again on the observation deck. They watched the stars, each lost in thought. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "I never thought a fist bump could lead to all this." Solara smiled. "It's more than a fist bump. It's a reminder that the universe is shaped by people, not titles, by honesty, not power, and by kindness, not fear." Ethan nodded, feeling a quiet contentment. He realized that in a galaxy full of complexity, politics, and power struggles, it was the simplest gestures, the most genuine actions that truly mattered. And he had just witnessed the extraordinary effect of living honestly, without expectation, with courage and humility. The stars stretched endlessly above them, silent witnesses to the unfolding story. The Queen and the mechanic, from different worlds and different lives, had formed an unexpected bond, one that promised to change the galaxy in ways no one could predict. And so, the story of the human mechanic and the Galactic Queen became more than just a tale of chance. It became a story of connection, honesty, and the power of small acts. A reminder that even in the vastness of space, a single moment, A fist bump, a kind word, a simple gesture could bridge worlds, shape destinies, and inspire generations. Ethan returned to his workbench, feeling both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Engines still hummed, ships still needed repair, and life went on. But now, every time he tightened a bolt or tested a freighter's system, he carried with him the knowledge that even the smallest actions could echo across galaxies, changing lives in ways beyond imagination. Solara watched him from the observation deck, a quiet smile on her face. She knew that the galaxy was safer, fairer, and brighter, not because of armies or laws, but because of the integrity of a human mechanic who had fist-bumped a queen without knowing who she was. And in that quiet truth, both the mechanic and the queen found something extraordinary, a bridge between worlds built on honesty, humility, and trust. Life on the outer space station had settled into a rhythm, yet it was no longer the same for Ethan. His once ordinary days, filled with engines, grease, and the hum of freighters, now carried an added weight, the knowledge that he was trusted by the queen of an entire galaxy. Though he continued to repair ships with the same precision as before, each bolt he tightened and each circuit he tested felt more significant. His work now represented not only human skill but also a bridge of trust between civilizations. Solara, too, had changed. Her leadership was growing stronger, shaped not only by her royal duties, but also by her encounters with people like Ethan. She valued his perspective because it reminded her of the lives beyond the grand halls of the central systems, the mechanics, traders, and everyday citizens whose work kept the galaxy functioning. Yet with this newfound bond came challenges that neither Ethan nor Solara could have foreseen. One morning, a high-ranking council official arrived at the station. His expression was stern, his posture rigid. He represented the central systems and had been sent to assess Solara's recent decisions, particularly her engagement with someone from the outer sectors. Queen Solara, the official began formally, I must question your involvement with this human mechanic. Are you allowing personal feelings to influence matters of state? Solara met his gaze evenly. Ethan provides insight I would otherwise never see. His perspective represents countless others in the outer sectors. This is not personal, it is practical. The official raised an eyebrow. Practical perhaps, but unorthodox. The council may see this as favoritism. Ethan, standing slightly behind Solara, felt a surge of nervousness. He had never dealt with politicians, diplomats, or the rigid rules of galactic governance. He kept his hands folded, silently hoping Solara's wisdom would guide the conversation. Solara took a deep breath. Extraordinary times require unconventional approaches. The galaxy is not built by rulers alone. It is built by its people. Ethan reminds us of that truth. The official's gaze softened slightly, though skepticism remained. Very well, but understand that scrutiny will follow. Your connection to him may attract attention, and not all of it positive. Ethan nodded quietly. He realized that trust with a queen was not without its trials. Even honest intentions could be questioned in a world governed by protocol, tradition, and politics. In the following weeks, subtle challenges began to arise. Some delegates questioned the inclusion of a human in policy discussions. Traders in the central systems were curious, wary of the influence of someone so far removed from their daily lives. Yet through it all, Solara remained steadfast. She valued honesty and practical insight over status or conformity. Ethan, for his part, adapted quickly. He observed council meetings, studied debates, and learned the language of diplomacy. Though his words were simple, his honesty and clarity made them stand out. He offered solutions based on real-world experience rather than theoretical ideals. When others spoke in abstract terms, he grounded them with practical reasoning. His input, though unexpected, proved invaluable. One evening, after a particularly long session of council discussions, Ethan returned to the station's repair bay. Exhausted, he wiped his hands and stared at the engines waiting for maintenance. Solara entered quietly, moving with the calm authority that had first impressed him during their first encounter. "You've done well today," she said softly. "The council listened. They even adjusted some of their plans based on your suggestions." Ethan shook his head, still incredulous. "I just spoke the truth about what I see out here. I never imagined it would matter so much." Solara smiled. "That is the power of honesty, Ethan. One truthful perspective can influence many, even when politics seems overwhelming." Their conversation was interrupted by a communication alert. A distress signal from a nearby colony had been received. Systems failures, supply shortages, and infrastructure damage threatened the settlement. Solara turned to Ethan. "This is where your experience matters most. Will you help?" Ethan nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Let's see what we can do." Within hours, Ethan and Solara were aboard a shuttle en route to the colony. The journey was tense, resources were limited, and time was critical. Upon arrival, they found chaos, overworked maintenance crews, damaged ships, and a community struggling to survive in the harsh environment of the outer sector. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. He organized repair teams, directed energy supplies, and coordinated temporary housing for stranded workers. Solara worked alongside him, not only supervising but actively participating, demonstrating leadership that inspired both humans and aliens alike. Through this shared effort, trust deepened. Colonists, who had initially been skeptical of the human mechanic and the Queen's presence, now saw the power of cooperation. Solara's calm guidance, combined with Ethan's hands-on expertise, transformed a desperate situation into a manageable recovery effort. During a quiet moment, as they watched the sun set behind distant asteroids, Solara spoke. "You see, Ethan, leadership is not just about commands or ceremonies. It is about understanding, empathy, and action, and you remind me of that every day." Ethan smiled faintly. "I just do what I can. I never thought I'd be here, helping a queen and a colony at the same time." Solara laughed softly. "Extraordinary moments often happen to ordinary people. You are proof of that." The days following the colony's recovery brought recognition. Reports of Ethan's practical solutions and Solara's compassionate leadership reached distant sectors. While some doubted the unconventional partnership, many saw it as a model for cooperation and mutual respect between rulers and their people. Yet not all attention was positive. Certain factions within the council and the central systems were wary of a mechanic influencing policy. Rumors spread, suggesting that the Queen's judgment was compromised by personal connections. Solara, aware of the potential consequences, remained composed. She trusted Ethan, and more importantly, she trusted the principles of honesty and integrity he represented. One night, during a quiet patrol of the station, Solara and Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the docking bays. Ships glimmered in the dim light and distant stars twinkled across the void. "Do you ever worry about the politics?" Ethan asked quietly. "That people might use me, or that I'm in over my head?" Solara turned to him, her expression serious but gentle. "Yes, I worry. But you must remember, trust is not about avoiding risk. Trust is about believing in the value of what is right, even when others doubt you. You are not just a mechanic, you are a reminder to the galaxy of what is important: honesty, integrity, and the courage to do the right thing." Ethan took a deep breath, absorbing her words. He realized that his ordinary life had become extraordinary, not because of status or recognition, but because he had chosen to act honestly, consistently, and with humility. As weeks turned into months, Ethan continued his work with Solara. Together, they oversaw infrastructure projects, helped colonies develop sustainable systems, and improved communication between distant sectors. Their bond, built on mutual respect, grew stronger. Each challenge they faced, from mechanical failures to political tension, reinforced the lessons they had learned together, that integrity, humility, and collaboration could overcome even the greatest obstacles. One morning, a major crisis struck. A vital space station on the trade route had experienced a catastrophic engine failure, threatening hundreds of lives. Solara immediately contacted Ethan. "We need your expertise," she said. Ethan didn't hesitate. Within hours, he was on site, coordinating repairs and implementing emergency systems. Solara supervised, ensuring supplies and personnel were efficiently deployed. The operation was intense, with every second critical. Yet through determination, skill, and teamwork, they stabilized the station, saving lives and maintaining the vital trade route. After the crisis, as they returned to the outer station, Solara turned to Ethan. "You see what your honesty and skill can do. One person acting with integrity can make a difference far beyond what they imagine." Ethan smiled, finally understanding the truth of her words. "I guess being ordinary isn't so ordinary after all." Solara laughed softly. "Indeed, and the galaxy is better because of it." As Part 4 concludes, the story highlights not just the growth of Ethan and Solara, but also the lessons of trust, integrity, and courage. Ordinary actions like honesty and genuine work can ripple across worlds, influence leadership, and inspire entire civilizations. The bond between a human mechanic and a galactic queen remains a testament to the power of small acts, the importance of perspective, and the extraordinary impact of everyday honesty. Ethan continued his work, not seeking recognition but knowing that each action, each repair, each gesture of honesty had meaning far beyond what he could see. Solara, guided by his insight, ruled with compassion, understanding, and a vision that bridged worlds. Together, they showed the galaxy that leadership, trust, and integrity were not bound by status, titles, or appearances. They were built in small, honest moments, one fist bump at a time.